Thank you so much. I sometimes reflect back, and every once in a while I have to do a little true confession. So I'll give you a little true confession about maybe a little stereotypical true confession about being a cop. Used to drive around on the streets, and I will tell you that if I saw somebody standing on a corner and they looked like they were strung out, you want to know what went through my head? Need to go to jail. No need for these people on the street. Need to just put them away and get rid of them, because they're worthless to the society. Can I be honest with you? Can I say that that's what went through my head? Is that awful? Am I a horrible human being? Because I used to think that as I drove around and I'd see these people and I'd get annoyed because they'd step out in traffic, and I'd get annoyed at them because I figured they could just stop making these stupid choices in their life and they'd just go out and get their act together and get a job and do like I did and everybody else should do. Well, let me tell you something. When this started happening in my family, maybe that's why it happened, because maybe I needed to learn something. Maybe I needed to learn something about being judgmental. Maybe I needed to learn something about how I looked at other people and their circumstances. And I thought I was a pretty nice person. I thought I was a pretty kind person. But I'm telling you, when I saw people in that condition, I didn't see any point. I didn't see anything that was going to help. All I saw was jail. And now that I think about it, and I realized that that's what went through my head, the first thing when I saw that is like, wow, did I need to learn a lesson? Because I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think that anymore. When I drive down the street and I see somebody standing on a corner, or I see somebody standing there trying to, get something from people and they're strung out and all of that, you want to know what the first thing that goes through my brain is now? That's somebody's son. That's somebody's daughter. Somebody is probably worried sick and praying and praying and praying that they'll get better and they'll come back to them. Because they won't believe for 1 minute that that beautiful child that they raised ended up in that situation. And I had to learn that lesson. Because it was tough, because it's hard, because I know there's a stereotype about a lot of things out there, and that's why most of the people in jail are in there because of drug-related crimes. Is because our society is not happy with that, and neither am I. Consequences should happen for people that commit crimes. That is the truth. I'm not going to sit here and say you shouldn't get in trouble if you steal people's stuff or anything else. No, that's what should happen. But there's a difference between separating the crime from the person. And the reality is when you're dealing with somebody who's on drugs, and particularly when they're on these kinds of drugs that they're on today, asking them to stop taking drugs is like asking them to stop breathing. Think about shoving somebody underwater and holding them underwater. And in their minds, the air that they're trying to get is the drug they're trying to get. What would you do? What would you do to get it? How hard would you fight? What extent would you go to get something that you think is like air to you? And then you start to understand how incredibly strong these drugs affect people's brains. And so when my son started committing crimes, it was devastating to me. When they started ending up on the street and in the hospital over and over, and if I were to go into the stories, it would take me a half an hour to just list all of the different hospital stays. From getting abscesses from shooting heroin to the point where they were going to amputate his arm at one point. And I found out about it because I didn't even know where he was, and I got a call, and by the time I got there, I get to the hospital and he's not there. And I'm like, but I thought he had to have these antibiotics and it had to be IV, and they said he did. And we just got him on him. We walked out of the room, he ripped the IV out and he's gone. I found him in the parking lot, walking around with no shoes on, his feet all bloody. Didn't even know where he was, didn't even know what was going on, blood pouring out of his arm. I tried to take him somewhere, he wouldn't go. I begged him to go somewhere, he wouldn't go. I can't tell you, every time this happened, it would be like, this makes no sense to me. Well, that's when you start to understand drugs. It makes no sense. And what they will do makes no sense. And it's because they don't know what they're doing. Half the time, they're completely driven by something that is beyond their capability of handling, and that's why they have to get help, and that's why their families need to be there for them, and that's why I don't want to abandon them, and that's why I want to help other parents to find what we found, which was a way to get out of being in the depressive states that we were in. My wife and I got to the point where we didn't go anywhere, we didn't do anything. We lived in our house and we closed the door and we went to bed, and all I wanted to do was get in bed at night and close my eyes and hope that maybe if I woke up everything would change. And it didn't. Year after year, not day after day, year after year. It was 9 years before our older son even remotely decided he was going to even consider going in to do any kind of treatment. And then it was even longer, because then it didn't even work, because it wasn't his idea, because we tried to shove him through the door of the place and he didn't want to go. And we didn't know how to deal with it, and we didn't know what to do, because frankly, we didn't sign up to do that. We didn't know that that's what would happen. We assumed that we followed the recipe. And the recipe was, you do all these things with your kids, and you're good to your kids, and you raise your kids in a great home, and this all happens. That doesn't make any sense, because what's supposed to happen is they're supposed to be perfect. And all that's supposed to happen. And the reason I tell you that is not to make you feel bad if somebody in your family is divorced, or somebody in your family had a trauma, or somebody in your family was molested and they ended up on drugs. What I'm telling you is it doesn't matter. It doesn't take that to cause the problem. It could be anybody in any family, anywhere. And that's what I had to learn. And I just sat there and I can't tell you. I read to you what my wife wrote. It was so bad that we didn't know what to do. And I'm going to tell you one of the first things that they said to us at a PAL meeting, and you're probably going to be saying to yourself, this is what they tell you to do? And this is what they told us to do. I get it, you guys are totally depressed. I get it, you don't even know if your sons are going to live. You know what you guys need to do? No, what? Go on vacation. Well, that's ridiculous. We're not going anywhere. We wouldn't even have any fun. What if something happens? The phone rings, we got to be there. We're going to go to the hospital. Nope, turn off your phone, go on vacation. And you know what? If you have to, fake it that you're going to have fun. And the reason is you've got to figure out how to separate from this drama, this trauma, all the stuff that's going on. You've got to get better, because if you're not better, if you don't have the emotional strength and the health to get better, then how in the world can you expect that from your sons? Because they're looking at you. As a parent, you will always be a role model. You will always be somebody they look up to. And you know what? If all they see when you have a problem is that you can't handle it, and that you just completely fall apart when you have a problem, well, guess what you just did? You just gave them another reason to use drugs, because now they're sitting there looking there and going, they ruined your life. And you're making it real clear to them that they did ruin your life. And I'm like, I do not want to do that. I do not want my sons to carry the burden of thinking that they ruined my life. I could say it a different way now. I might allow them to ruin my life. I might allow that to happen, but I don't have to. And that's what people in the meeting started to say. You don't have to allow that to happen. You can love your children, you can love your sons, and you can go on vacation and have a good time. And the first time we tried it, we came back with it. We got literally, I'm not kidding, we checked into a hotel. We went up to Flagstaff. We checked into a hotel. We sat down. We were there for about 2 hours, got up, checked out of the hotel, and drove home. And said that we can't do that. Went back to our meeting and we told them we didn't do it. And you know what they said? That's okay, do it next week. Try it again. Keep trying. And eventually, I want to share with you one more thing that my wife wrote in this journal. It was on our 28th anniversary, so this would be 7 years ago, a little over 7 years ago. And we were it was bad. We hadn't seen our son in months. We didn't even know where he was. He was literally, our older son was literally living in the bushes in parks. And we couldn't find him. We didn't know where he was. The younger one, we kind of had sightings of him every once in a while, but he didn't have anything to do with this. He wouldn't even speak to us. And And I remember we used to think about it, and we'd talk, and we'd go, we just had these visions of dreams of them going to college, and we had a college fund, and we saved for it, and all I wanted them to do was be happy and to go do something that they would enjoy with their lives. And then all I could see is not only did they not do it, but what are our lives going to be like without them in our lives? And what's it going to be like if we never see the things that we were hoping we would, our dreams? And so we decided to go on this vacation again, and we really decided, they pushed us, and so we were going to go to California because we figured that way it would sort of be really hard for us just to turn around and come back. So we got in the car, and actually my wife rented a car. It was kind of fun. So she rented this car, and she said, let's go, we're going to try and have fun. So we rented a Camaro, and so we drove this Camaro all the way over to California, and it was like, I'll do anything to try and get you to smile. And we stayed at this beautiful place, and they had a beautiful swimming pool, and we just, we're gonna okay, we're just gonna relax and all that. And my wife wrote this in her journal that day, so it was actually on my birthday. She says, we came back to the hotel, we took a short nap, and then we went to the jacuzzi, and now we're sitting by the pool. We just ordered some snacks, and I have to say that life is good right now. Both of us are doing a lot of reading, and we're working on ourselves rather than trying to control or fix our sons. I am watching a young man and his daughter, around 5 years old, play in the pool. And am I imagining one day that I might have a little granddaughter of my own? I'm doing everything to reframe my picture of my boys in my mind, because they're no longer boys, they're adult men. And I have to learn how to envision them that way. And it was funny because she said something to me while we were by the pool. She looked at me and she said, Kim, do you think we will ever have grandkids? And I said, I don't know. I said, I just hope our kids live. And I was like in a state of just disbelief that this could happen to somebody's life. But let me tell you, a lot of things have happened since then. If you didn't happen to pick up the December issue of Money Magazine, that's us. And they featured us in this article to talk about this issue of how the cost of this opioid crisis. But I told them I wouldn't do the article unless they talked about the hope of what PAL brings. And the reporter promised me, and they did. And PAL got more traction out of the fact that this went out around the country than anything else we had ever done. And now it's just the information and the people coming to us wanting to start meetings is just blowing up. And we're trying to meet this need, and we're working on fundraising, and we're working on growing into a strategic plan where we can make this happen so that we can meet this need all around. And I'm dealing right now with a woman in Australia who wants to start a meeting there, and there's several couples in Canada that want to start meetings in Canada, and there's all these other people, because this is everywhere. It's not just the United States, it's all over the world. And the reality is it's not going to get better anytime soon. It's been around since the dawn of time, and it's going to continue to be a problem. And if it's not the opioids today, it'll be something else. By the way, if you didn't know this, the biggest drug problem right now that's coming out of Mexico is meth. It's come back. The opioid thing, even though it continues, is actually not the biggest drug problem that they're dealing with right now. And so it's just continuing. It'll cycle. It'll be other things. And so PAL's mission is to provide hope through education and support. We want to be there for families. We want to be there for parents. We want to be there to make those meetings available for people everywhere they are. And so what happened? Well, it got to the point where we really couldn't have contact with our sons because it was devastating us. It was to the point where if we saw them, we were in such a depressive state we couldn't deal with it. And eventually we had to just say no, we couldn't do that anymore. And so our older son in particular, was the first one, and he ended up in the hospital multiple times, but this time he ended up in there. He was really sick, and he was in there over Christmas, and at that point, they called us, and they said, hey, your son's in the hospital, and we were literally packing up our car. We were getting ready to leave town, and interestingly enough, we had done this the year before. The exact same thing the year before at Christmas time. Literally, we're packing up our car, we're getting ready to go, and the phone rings, and he was in the hospital the year before. And we just unpacked. We went and sat in the hospital for almost 10, 11, 12 days while he promised us he was going to get better. And then, of course, checked out of the hospital and immediately went and did drugs. And now it's a year later, and here we are. We're doing the exact same thing again. We're packing up. I am not exaggerating. That phone rings, and it's this hospital, and they are telling us that he's in the hospital and he's in really bad shape and that he wants to see us. And I said, you think he's going to die? And this nurse is like, what kind of question is that? I said, do you think he's going to die? And she goes, I don't know. He's in bad shape. I said, well, is there somebody there that can answer that question? And she says, well, I guess the doctor's here in the room. I said, well, then let me talk to him. He gets on the phone. I ask him. He thinks I'm crazy too. He's like, why are you asking me that? I go, I just want to know, do you think my son is going to die? And he goes, well, we're going to do everything we can. So I guess if you want to answer the question, I think he's going to live. I think we're going to be able to take care of what this is. I said, thank you very much. Tell our son that we love him and we're going on vacation. Now let me explain something to you. If I started off this whole entire conversation today and told you that that's how I treated my sons, do you think that's a loving and kind thing to do? Or not? But if you didn't know what had happened for the first 12 years, the last 12 years of dealing with him, then you wouldn't know that what happened next was him sitting there in that hospital bed when that doctor told him that, and a few days later saying to himself, I don't want to live this way anymore. I've got to change. And we were on vacation. And I'll never forget, we came back and we just kept praying the whole time. I hope he does something. I hope he gets in and does something right. And the next thing you know, it was about a week later, we got a phone call. He was in a treatment center. He had taken himself there. And then he had checked himself in from there. He went from a 30-day program. He went into another program. He went into one that took almost a year. We didn't set it up. We didn't call him. We didn't do anything. He did it himself. And then the next thing you know, he gave us a call and he had met somebody, been sober for a long time. In the meantime, he had tracked down his brother. He had talked his brother into going into treatment. He had gotten into treatment. And so here they are a few months ago. Our older son is over on the right. That's him and his fiancée. That's our younger son on the left. And the reality is that that's been almost 5 years ago. He's an IT professional. He has a great job in the treatment world. He helps people. He does too. He actually does it part-time because he can't stand not being around it and helping. And she's been a part of that as well. And the most important thing is that we have a new little friend in our life. And unfortunately, she was born with a heart defect, and she's had to have 2 major open heart surgeries, and she's just a little trooper, but she's doing really well right now, and she's my little 3-year-old best buddy. And we like hanging out together. We like hiking together. We like doing lots of stuff together. Come on, somebody's got an awe on that one, right? This is her about 3 weeks ago. And the best part of this picture is she's on her way to a church daughter-daddy dance. And that's her dad holding her hand, and he's off taking her to the dance. She talked about it for about 3 or 4 days, about how much fun she had. And the reality is that I don't know that this would have happened, and my son will tell you that this would never have happened if it wasn't for the fact that we made some changes in our life. And those changes in our life and what we learned at PAL motivated him to make the changes he did in his life. And our younger son actually tells the same story.